Krystal, welcome to the show. It's so nice to have you on. Thank you for being here.
Of course, I'm so excited to be here. Talk about all things brand and marketing and digital. It's going to be fun.
I'm definitely excited to learn more about it because also I'm starting my own separate journey right now. So I will be a little bit selfish here, ask a lot of questions around that. But just to begin with, when I was preparing for this conversation and I was reading through all your recognitions, nominations, I'm like, is it still the same person? Because you've done so much, you achieved so much. You're absolutely one of the top marketing experts in the country, maybe in the world. You tell me, you know better. But were you always passionate about marketing? Because I know you started working as a lawyer.
It doesn't make sense on paper, does it, Karina?
No, it doesn't. It's like, sometimes I find people they're so scared to make a move, even if it's just a subtle change in their career. But here we have lawyer and one of the most successful, brand creators, marketers. Like it's two different things.
But I can help you make sense of it. So I know
Please.
I laugh in that it doesn't make sense until you get to start talking to me, then it makes perfect sense. So I was a young girl growing up in the middle of the country, a town called Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and was always entranced by the idea of not marketing. I wouldn't even really have known kind of what we were talking about if we had talked about that back then, but more of storytelling and movies. At the time when I grew up, it was about, the latest stuff on MTV and what was in Vogue and Cosmo that was coming through. And I always loved the idea around storytelling and art and all of that. And so the path kind of led me to, as you noted, going to law school in Los Angeles and graduating at the top of the class and getting the big firm job and working with amazing clients and realizing, boy, that isn't what I wanted to do the rest of my life. So I always I can't believe that young girl at 25 years old pivoted away from something that I'd invested time in school and a lot of money into achieving and sitting for the bar exam and all those sorts of things. And I have admiration for that person. Sometimes you said it doesn't seem like the same person. I sometimes am like, wow, boy, did that take guts. But I just knew I didn't want to go down a path that was not meant for where I wanted to go. And so I think the through line for me is about creativity and telling great stories and making beautiful things and putting those into the world. And if they just so happen to drive, massive consumer results, which is the point, commercial results, that's awesome. Right. And so I think I really found my path to marketing. But I think what makes me different is the understanding of, I always joke in that nobody sits around and talks about marketing like marketers do, or like we are in this conversation. No consumer, no us in our non-marketer hat are sitting around thinking about marketing all the time. And I think what makes me so different in that, because I didn't come up through that traditional path, I do care about the, brand pillars and strategy and those sorts of things that we're doing. But I also care about like, what are we putting in the world? Why? And how are we making people's lives better? Because that's the only thing that matters. And how are you enhancing, that experience? And I think that's what makes me a little bit different, and not so obsessive over what we think as marketers, but more of how do we just show up in a way that's fun and that delights people.
And you're so right, because I feel like still a lot of people, they think like marketing is more just paying for ads and that's about it. But as you
Boy, is
said,
that
like,
sad. Yeah.
but yeah, like you creating the narrative, you creating the story. And now when I think about it as a lawyer, to win the case, that's what you do. You create the
Oh,
story for your audience.
boy, did you tie that together better than I did. And that's actually how I describe it. The ability to go, thinking back to my early days, go in a courtroom and convince either a judge or a jury And I always say taking sometimes really boring facts and selling them on a perception or an idea. Of course, that's what I did for the first 7, 8 career years of my professional life. I think where I've landed a little bit different in what you just broke down is where there I was paid to sell a very particular sort of story, whether I knew it to be true or not, to win. I think what makes modern marketing a lot more in line with my values as a person is I'm not trying to sell you something that you don't need, want, or that isn't going to make your life better. I think that's what true marketing and finding that audience is, really bringing something to them that they need and enhances the experience. And you're not trying to manipulate people with brilliant copy or beautiful pictures to get them to do something that otherwise isn't going to be added to their experience. That's my kind of like philosophy.
So then, how do you sell it to people what they need? Because now there is so much choice, so many companies, so many brands, and I feel that everyone is trying to push the same message. So, how do you create that successful brand strategy? What is your
Yeah,
approach?
I love that. When I think about brand strategy, and the key things to really think about is I go into a new role or work with a team or advise a brand. I work with some startup companies and others. Really, to me, it comes down to like 4 key considerations, because to be in a sea of sameness is like death for a company. We all know this. You have to be different. You have to add something that makes people's lives better. And I really break those down into the purpose of the company. Sometimes that step, Karina, is missed, right? And it's like asking ourselves, why are we here? And having a really clear reason. Is it helping women achieve financial independence? Is it inspiring people to get back into nature and lead a healthier life? Is it providing easy tools to let people take control of their mental health? Like, that's the foundation and the real place to start. Why do we exist? And making sure that everybody within the organization and externally really understands, like, what are we doing here? What are we selling? And some companies are really complicated. So I think boiling that down is critical. And then helps communicate and connect to that audience. The second's identity. This is often where people kind of think of when they think of the brand, right? It's what is our culture? What makes us unique and stand out? What's our unique point of view in the world? How do we talk? How do we engage? And I think defining what that is, if you think of some of the brands that stand out immediately that you would know is a favorite is of course Liquid Death, right? Not for everybody, but boy, do you know their kind of renegade sort of culture, really just kind of completely out there in the best possible way. And they really have owned and carved a place for themselves. I think it's the biggest example of brand building, especially when you consider that they're selling canned water. The fourth is really about values. To me, sorry, I know Doug's gonna bark here for a second. Give her a break and edit
No,
this
that's
part out.
okay.
Yeah. On values. I think when you think about Gen Z today, and I make it such a habit to spend as much time as I can with Gen Z and understand them and engage and have conversations with them, they really, really care about, do the insides of the company match the outsides? How are they treating their employees? How are they showing up? How are they not leaving negative impact on the world? How are they really making a difference? It's just so important. So it doesn't just make good human feel good sense. It also really connects with the consumer, and especially a Gen Z and probably even Gen Alpha more and more. They vote with their dollars, and they're going to come and support and engage with a company that they feel like aligns internally and externally. And the finally is brand experience. That's a marketing buzzy word, but to me, it really boils down to is how do we make consumers feel when they wear our product, when they consume our product? Is it empowered, invigorated, inspired, chilled, relaxed? Like, how are we really creating from the first time we engage with them to, through product delivery to post to getting them to come back? How are we just showing up and making their lives better and seamless and frictionless and fun? To me, those are the key ingredients in serving a experience and a brand and a product to people that makes their lives better, makes them feel good for being part of the fan community around it, and probably makes the world a better place in the meantime.
Speaking about experience, it's probably like from a different angle, but let's say like Starbucks, right? Everyone thinks
Mhm.
they sell coffee. No, the reason why they're so popular is they provided a different experience. They had a
Mhm.
different strategy. So it's more than just the coffee. Same with Apple, right? It's a completely different experience like when you enter like Apple store and other companies, let's just put it
Yeah.
this way without naming, and you feel like you're part of something bigger and it's not
Yes.
about just the product.
Yeah. And Karina, from everything, I had a lost phone a couple weeks ago, and I hadn't been in an Apple store in a while. And you're so right. You walk in and it's a beautiful space. You already feel cool and like modern and like super space age just by being there, right? Its design is beautiful. I'm sure they had a million of smart people figuring out. There's like a sense of calm, even if the store is busy. When you walk in and you're like, oh, it feels so clean, and I can touch and I can look at the products and I can pick them up and feel them. And then, you know, even how the team members, the staff is, suited up, the geniuses, right? And you can see them like helping and engaging. And it just sends this message of Apple doesn't just want to sell me this iPhone, but they want to invite me back in and they want me to be educated about how it works. And if there's a problem, some actual human's going to sit side by side with me, like they did with me, and figure out how to recover all my data when my phone was lost. So you're right, right? That is customer experience to the max. You leave feeling like you're part of something and taken care of.
Exactly. Even like for me, when I just launched this podcast, I went to the Apple store. I'm like, guys, can you help me out if there is like a free app where I can learn how to make music for the intro? They're like, come back tomorrow. We're going to train you. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
So
And
that's
that's what, and Karina, that's what it is. And you will never forget that. Right? Like, and look, Apple's obviously a master class in this sort of thing, but I think anybody at any stage of company can take those customer centric lessons and apply them to how they're building their company, how they're training the people on the team, how they're showing up in social through customer service, like everything, that's everything. Yeah.
it also made me think about more like business and like partnerships, brand partnerships. What I find like sometimes even on Instagram, right? You can see one influencer promoting products which had nothing to do with what she's offering.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, is it genuine or not? Like, how do you approach this? Because like I can imagine now it's so difficult to grow the business organically and you have to partner with other influencers or companies, create some like shared experience. What is the right way to do it?
Yeah. Let me break it into two pieces. So first I'll talk about influencers and kind of where we are. Creators, I always go with the creator phrase. We could debate that. Influencers, creators, are they the same or are they different? But I'm going to set that for another podcast, Karina. So I'll talk about influencers and I'll talk about traditional collaborations between brands, which I also think is a fun and exciting way and something really cool that you can do at any level of company. So going back on the creator side, I've been in creator facing businesses since 2017. I am not the earliest adopter, but pretty early in 2017, I was with a company called Fullscreen. So I put myself in the OG category of having worked with talent and understanding that world from the beginning when our founder at the time famously told me, Krystal, in a few years, nobody's going to care about the celebrities that you're working with today. They're going to care about YouTubers, and YouTubers are going to turn into these multifaceted entertainment companies, and they're going to sell products. And this next generation isn't even going to watch television. And I was like, okay, George, I believe you. And he was right. Right. And so, look, the early days back then of creator partnerships, and that would a creator and a brand, was very experimental. Brands didn't really know what they were getting. A lot of people didn't really get it. And so brands at the time, you had a few early adopters that were willing to come in and kind of test, but that 1.0 stage was brands didn't really get it. They didn't really understand this creator world. The creators would get these long briefs from the brand that was like, you must shoot the camera at this angle. It must be this long. This is exactly your script. And it may not even align with like who their audience is or anything. And they'd get a check. And so they would do this camera thing and blah, blah, blah. And then the brands would be like, why didn't this work? Sometimes it worked. That was really 1.0. Thank God we've moved away from that. 2.0, kind of where I feel like we're through and winding down. Brands finally got the memo of the reason these creators are successful is because they're creative. They understand their audience. They understand how to engage with them. They understand what works. You've probably already vetted the creator at this point. They probably got hundreds of thousands or millions of people following them. It's because they know, they built that. So brands started to come to the table more in a collaborative iteration, the smart ones, and said, hey, you know your audience. And the guardrails and rules got a little bit lighter. They still exist, right? But really started to give more of the creative reins over to talent. I think that produced the best sort of partnerships that we've seen maybe the last 5-6 years, right? Where creative freedom's really given over and creators are really allowed to create, which is what they do. I think where we are now is kind of the 3.0, which I'm really excited about. And more, there's an amazing creator. I'll give her a shout out, Girl Boss Town, who's just awesome. I got to work with her earlier this year on a campaign we did for Hilton Hotels. But where she's going with it is really becoming almost a consultant to brands, sometimes behind the scenes, sometimes in a long multi-year or just a behind the scenes relationship where she says, bring me as an outside consultant for your team. Let me build a whole platform and strategy with your marketing team about how to engage this audience, developing creative ideas. And I think that's kind of a really fun place to play because the creators now, you're talking about, they have a decade plus experience under their belt. They really get it. And I think the smartest and savviest CMO counterparts that I have will really bring those people to the table, bring them into the mix and engage with, those people that just have a tap in on the craft of social and engaging with that audience. So that's on the creator side. On the partnership side, I will just say that I think really smart brand partnerships, and I'll give you two things that I really look for, making sure that it does feel aligned. I like some of those partnerships sometimes that do feel a little bit random because I do think that creates buzz. You think of Taco Bell and Crocs, right? Not something you would naturally think of, but did it set the world on fire? But it actually, if you peel the layers, it made a lot of sense because you have this kind of maverick brands on both sides that are a little irreverent, kind of funky, and then them coming together to do something really imaginative was fun and unexpected and kind of crazy. So I think as long as you share that fabric of purpose and audience and fandom and our values really align, I think you can get partnerships is one of my most favorite ways to get really creative, to reach audiences that are parallel to yours, but adjacent and different. And I think if you find the right partner, where there's an even exchange of value between both sides, it can really unlock in a really economical way. Sometimes there isn't necessarily dollars exchange in a partnership like that. Sometimes it's just shared audience and values and cross promotion. Can be a really great way for even an early stage business to kind of create some noise, create some stir and buzz and get people excited. So I think it's a fun lever to pull if you're creative about it.
What you just mentioned, that sometimes when two brands, they don't look exactly the same or aligned, but you can create this buzz is like with Snoop Dogg. Like a month ago on LinkedIn, he started posting like, "Oh, I'm giving up smoke" or something like this. So people assumed he's gonna stop smoking literally. And then like a few weeks later, it's a new ad that he like, I think like invested into like electric fireplace or whatever it is, but it has nothing to do with him giving up smoking.
Yeah,
He's still probably
exactly.
doing it, but that was
Exactly.
very creative.
Yeah.
Speaking about creators, influencers, everyone is saying it's such a saturated market. Now, if you're just starting, like you cannot get that traction because before, right? Like your video can go viral or like whatever it is, but now it's very difficult. Do you think it's really so?
Hmm. This is what I would say about that, Karina. It's a good question. I'm always hesitant to make huge proclamations that influencer, the path is done and you can't go viral and you can't have success, because being someone who's faced a lot of you can't do this in my career and then prove them wrong every single time. I'm always hesitant to make such statements myself because I think sometimes that's BS. But what I will say, there, no doubt, I see surveys and things all the time where companies go out and talk to Gen Z, and the number one job that Gen Z and Gen Alpha want is to be a content creator. And now anybody more and more people are flooded to the platforms, whatever platform it may be. This is the future. This is what people want to do for work. It's probably why you and I are sitting here talking on this podcast. So yeah, boy, is there a lot of noise and other people out there. And I think gone are the early days of it all, when maybe the threshold to going viral was maybe, I'm never going to say it's easier, because I always give creators the due for actually creating a piece of content that does get shared like wildfire, and I never want to take that away, because there's a lot of hard work that goes into those things. So I wouldn't say it's not possible, but the advice I would give is kind of three pronged. I love things in threes, and I love lists and listicles, so I'll list it out. My advice for either creators that are trying to get traction, or let's say a small business that is starting out, and trying to figure out what their social strategy is, and what do they do. This is kind of where I start, and I give the same advice to both type, because by the way, creators are small businesses themselves, so they're kind of the same.
That's so true.
That is so true. So I will say the overwhelm of trying to do, I got to be on Facebook and Insta and TikTok, and maybe you have a Snap strategy, an X strategy, rest in peace. I don't know, but I would always say you don't have to be everywhere, right? You can pick one and do it really, really well. There are a lot of businesses and small businesses and creators I know now that are only do TikTok. And I think gone are the days of trying to serve across every sort of platform. Pick one and do it really freaking well. Become a student of what content works there. And I would say gone are the days of when people used to take one piece of content created for Reels or TikTok, and then they try to chop it up and repurpose it for everything else. And it just doesn't work. It stinks. That's bad strategy. So I would rather people pick a platform that they're really comfortable with, like, and inspired by, and focus there in terms of a social strategy. The second, and this will probably come as no surprise to the super savvy people in your audience, is always audience first. That means it's kind of where we were talking about earlier of how do I say the right thing in the right copy and be super marketing-y? Like, you're already failing if that's kind of the conversation of where you're starting. I think going into engaging with an audience to provide value, as marketers would say, but that means, am I informing, Karina? Am I inspiring you in your day? Am I entertaining you? Am I educating you about something? I mean, always, those are the sort of accounts that I love following, right? How are you making my day better, more productive, and more fun and joyful and inspiring? So I think always being audience first, entertainment first. And then finally, stop trying to chase the trend of the moment. It's the thing I see, Roman Empire, whatever. I don't know when this will date. That's like so dead right now, but it's the one I can think of recently where that starts to take fire. All the brands jump on the bandwagon. It's super cringy and weird. And I would rather people spend their time, creative, art, and energy of being innovative and creative and true to their own voice and finding their own path and being a trend setter rather than a trend chaser. And so I think it's a dangerous road to go down to always be trying to keep up with trends.
That's so beautifully said. It's also reminded me of what's his name? Like now he's such a like famous comedian, Matt Rife, I believe.
So I don't know.
So, but basically, he went viral maybe like a year and a half ago. Now he is in Forbes everywhere. But then he's saying, like, sure, I was producing this content for 11 years.
Yeah.
Nobody cared.
Mm-hmm.
But then I posted another video on TikTok. It was exactly the same video like I would post before, and
Mm-hmm.
it went viral.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know why. So now he has the audience, but it's exactly like he was true to his craft. Even like at some point he's like, am I delusional? Maybe I'm not even funny. Why nobody is following me? But now he is one of the most successful people in the industry.
And Karina, I love that point. I want to pause for a second on that moment. The creators that I know and the artists and celebrities or whomever, the typical overnight success was years, decades, sometimes in the making. And we've all heard the concept, putting your 10,000 hours again. And it's so true even for content creators, right? Understanding your craft, understanding, editing, lighting, all, copy, how to get better in terms of whatever it is, all the different facets of content creation. That takes time. So let's say you are lucky and something early that you do hits, then you kind of have this, then you got to keep it up. then you want to probably keep going. And so I think like putting your time in to really become imperfect. I love the story that you just shared of that guy cranking content, perfecting his delivery and rhythm and his comedy and getting better and probably getting, heckled and booed and like all the things that he did made him prepared for that moment when, things did take off. Right.
Is there like any resource, like a book or anything you can recommend for someone who wants to get more proficient in social media marketing and brand building in general?
It's funny. I'm a marketer who never reads marketing books.
I
you know,
can relate to this so
yes,
much.
what and I'm sure there are no shortage of amazing lists I'm sure we could come up with, and there are many bazillion resources out there for people to look at. But I think what I really encourage people is follow your curiosity to things you're curious about in general, right? I've got a bazillion books sitting on my desk right now. And these are just the ones that I can grab right here. I've got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's story. I have the story, the Pulitzer Prize winning memoir of the woman who took over the Washington Post. I got The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, and I've got books all
I
over.
have that one too.
So I think, look, yes, you can study, and there are many resources to go out there and figure out the nuts and bolts and basics of marketing, and people should do that. And I also encourage, like, be curious about life. Be curious about,
Mhm.
there's so many different things to learn. Pick up things that are going to be inspiring. One of the OG classics that I actually do recommend for anybody, just because I think it's great life lessons, is, and I'm sure you've heard this before, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's your basic tenets of how to be an actual fantastic human being and interacting with other people. And to me, those are the books I would really love early career people to really lean into, understand how to relate to people and build really solid and deep relationships with other people, because that's what's going to open doors and take you really far and inspire you or challenge you to think of opportunities that you may never have thought of for yourself. That's what I would say.
I'm exactly with you. I don't read any books on like the power of communication, strategy behind it. For me, it's more human psychology, negotiation. Like it's more like on a personal development, because by doing that, I can unlock something in myself and also understand others better. Because yes, you can call it marketing, like PR. I don't know. Even like when I was in finance on the investment side, you're like buying or selling the business, but at the end of the day, you're connecting with the person who is running the business, always consumers. So it's still like it's about people.
Yeah, exactly. And now you just reminded me. Now I do have a recommendation. Celeste Headley has a series of books about how to listen, how to have
Mm.
conversations with people, how to be an interesting storyteller. To me, Celeste's work um, is stuff I would recommend to people all day.
So as you mentioned that it's so important to be curious and pursue things that inspire you. What inspire you?
I think you and I share a passion for um, improve in being better, always being curious about how you can show up better for your team, show up better for your colleagues, um, have more confidence, becoming a subject matter expert. I'm really inspired. God, I don't think there's a day that goes by where I'm not inspired by my peers in the marketing community who are so kind and generous and giving. Um, and we all take on such a mantle. It's my big plug for pursuing a career in marketing, folks, is the camaraderie amongst all of us that are in this role. And there's probably a reason for that. I think a lot of us in the marketing role were tasked often within our organizations for being the heart and voice of the consumer. We're typically very people centric. We are that connection to the outside world for the company. We're the evangelist of the company and how it shows up. But what's amazing is this community is so connected, supportive, and really there for you when you want to bounce ideas, when you're facing a career transition or a pivot, when you're trying to decide between, pending opportunities, which way you should go. So I'll give a plug for the amazing marketing and marketer communities and the mentees that I work with. I'm fortunate to be an executive mentor in the Ad Week program. Spent a lot of time with mid and more senior marketers, helping them navigate, career and figure those sorts of things out. And every time I leave those conversations, I always tell them I get as much value, if not more, from this time with you. So getting out there, going to industry events, staying, walking up to people, introduce yourself at the cocktail reception afterwards. Don't just bolt at the end of the day when the programming's over. And I think putting yourself out there to meet people, that's been the biggest key to my success or new opportunities or figuring out my path, is just really being open, curious, and really wanting to engage with all different sorts of people. And so I encourage everybody to make space to do that. Even the introverts out there, I always say I'm a natural introvert who has learned to save a little bit of energy for extroverted tasks, because it'll benefit you.
And you never know where these connections will lead, like even if not right away. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty small world. So you're all connected.